Hi and welcome to the Lavender Learning channel. Thanks for tuning into this video, which is part of the school readiness playlist that I'm creating. And this one is about 5 important social skills that your child should have before they start school. My name is Jane. I'm an Australian educator with over 20 years experience. I currently work one-on-one with a lot of students, but my bookings are completely full and I get asked a lot of questions over and over again from parents who are keen to give their children the very best start they can. And that's why I'm creating this series. If you would like more information about helping your child get ready for school, or you'd like to keep up to date with some of the other videos I'll be posting about different educational topics, then please hit the subscribe button. Make sure that you've got notifications on so that you're alerted when I do put up new information. So today, 5 tips to help you prepare your child socially for school. And here we are. The first one is sitting and focusing. Now, children are naturally active, of course, and a good beginning school experience will include a fair bit of unstructured play for the children. That might be out in the playground, it might be part of a classroom setting, but there will be times as well where your child is required to sit and focus. Most classrooms will have a bit of a morning routine where children come in, sit down, they might have the roll called, then they might read a book, discuss some things about the class's day, the day that they have planned, that sort of thing. And it's really important that a child can sit and focus for those activities. But also throughout the day, there will be times where they need to sit still and focus as well. Now, some children might need something to help them sit still. And it's good to know that before they start school, rather than having to make that discovery as you're going. So if you can watch your child in some settings where they may need to sit and listen for a little while, perhaps reading with you as the caregiver is a good way to see how long their attention span is and to slowly build that over time and keep them engaged. Perhaps going to a play group or a music program or something like that and just seeing whether your child can stay engaged for the length of time that the leader or teacher is speaking. That's another great way to sort of assess that and also begin to practice and build that skill. And you can engage in maybe a kindergarten program or a preschool program where the teachers will be building this into their day, starting slowly at the beginning of a year and then building up the amount of time that they expect children to sit. And also, if your child is in a full-time early education setting already, you might know that they already have this skill or they've developed this over time already. So that's great. Sometimes children who struggle to sit and listen or pay attention may actually be struggling to see what's being presented, and so it loses their attention. Or perhaps they may be struggling to hear what's being presented, or there may be some other issue at play. And so it's good to recognise these things nice and early and do what we call early intervention and get in there and change things that need to be changed and adjusted for children as early as possible so that they're not missing out on very much because of whatever might be interfering a little bit with their ability to participate. So if you can be aware, I suppose, and be working on these skills nice and early, you'll be aware and alert nice and early if there are any issues so that your child then, when they get to school, has the absolute best chance and opportunity to participate and learn in the classroom structure. Okay, so that's number 1. And I did put on that slide there the concept of whole body listening. Some teachers use that term. That just means that if you're sitting still, your ears are listening, but the way that the teacher can recognise that you're listening is that your whole body shows that you're listening. So a listening body, traditionally, would be sitting still, looking at the person who's talking and demonstrating that way that they're listening with their ears as well. Some children might need to have a little fidget tool in their hands, or they might need to sit on a certain mat. So it might look a little bit different, that idea of whole body listening and trying to be inclusive with that. But if you hear that phrase, that's what the teacher's talking about. The next thing to be practicing with your child is following instructions. You can imagine that a teacher dealing with a class of somewhere between maybe 15 and 25 students, does not want to be repeating the same instruction individually to each of those children every time the class does something. And so it's really important that every child in the class can hear the instruction explained once and then go and do what they need to do. Now, of course, some children will need clarification here or there, or they might miss a detail, and teachers are well prepared to address those sorts of things. But you don't want your child to be unable to follow instructions because they've never had to do anything for themselves, and I know that's an exaggeration, but if you haven't asked your child to do something and then expected them to just go and do it because you would always be with them or do that thing for them, then they won't have that skill. I know most parents are not doing everything for children, and I'm sort of picking an exaggeration here to make the point. But it's really important that you do start asking your child to do things and expecting them to do them, and only checking in at the end when the thing should have been done. For example, go and put your shoes on, please. The child then will go and put their shoes on, and if they haven't done it in a few minutes, you might say, did you forget to put your shoes on? Or perhaps maybe that's a bit of a passive-aggressive way to say it. Perhaps you might be a bit kinder and say, have you got your shoes on yet? Or do you remember what you were meant to be doing? If you see that they've lost the track of what they were doing, you could say that. Hey, do you remember the instruction that I gave you, or the thing that I asked you to do? What are you supposed to be doing? And that might help them to trigger their memory. Oh, that's right. I came into the bedroom to put my shoes on, but I got distracted by my toys, so that they can be practicing that. Now, I've put on the slide there 3-step instructions, because often in class, and this is a language processing sort of expectation for normal language processing as well. A teacher might say to students a sort of 3-step instruction, maximum 3 usually, but they might say, go to your desk, get out your red spot writing book and take out a pencil. That's 3 little things. Or they might say, when you've been doing one activity, they might say, put away your counters, go and sit at your desk and get out your red spot writing book, something like that. You can practice this with your child. You might say, I would like you to go and put on your shoes, find your hat, and meet me at the back door. 3 things. And that way you can see when they get to that back door, have they done those 3 things? And you can be assessing whether or not they have to keep coming back and saying, I got my shoes, what else did I have to do? That kind of reliance probably means that you need to keep practicing that multi-step instruction process. And through practice, most children will develop that skill to be able to remember 3 steps and follow them. And if they don't, there could be another issue at play there, and you can build in some supports. For example, you might have some little visual cards that you use. When we have to do something in a certain order, we'll do a picture of each of the things. And teachers are quite familiar with giving children visual cues to remind them if they struggle with following instructions. But again, if you know these things before your child starts school, then you're not having to have conversations with the teacher as they're discovering this, which can be a bit of a frustrating process for the child and for the teacher over time. And a child who just simply cannot remember the instructions but is really trying hard can find that both, as I said, frustrating, but also a little bit of a negative experience for their self-esteem as well. Everybody else can do this. Why can't I remember? Or I don't think I'm very good at learning, or I don't think I'm very good at school. And I hear those kind of comments from my students. So I know how damaging it can be for kids if they do feel like they're different and there aren't any supports built in for a little while. So do, if you can, practice these things and make sure that you're aware of where your child sits with them. The third point here is about maintaining a tidy workspace, setting up, packing up, using a bin to put rubbish away, keeping track of your belongings and putting your things in your desk and making sure other people's things don't end up in your desk or your chair bag or whatever it might be. So little children often haven't had to manage their own belongings very much for a couple of reasons. Because they don't have a lot of belongings at that stage of life, perhaps, and also because parents tend to be around, and it's sometimes more efficient, and I know this as a parent of 4 children, it can be more efficient as a parent to quickly pack the bags yourself, put everything in, send them off, because you know it's all in there and it's all where it needs to be. The problem is that if we do these sorts of things for our children all the time, they don't learn the skill of being able to manage their own belongings. And in a classroom of 25 children, the teacher cannot be packing everybody's books back into every child's desk. They need to be able to do that for themselves. They need to be able to get out of their desk the things that they've been asked to get out. They need to be able to be part of an activity, and at the end of that activity, pack it away along with the rest of the class. So you can be practicing that by making a craft project together and then saying at the end, now hang on, we need to pack away everything and put all the rubbish in the bin or the trash can, I think Americans call it, or you can put all of your pencils back in the pencil container. Let's put all of the pens back in the pen container. Let's put the scissors very carefully, holding them the right way and walking with them. Put those away as well. We might help the person next to us. You might help your sibling do their things as well, so that overall together we create a clean workspace again. Practicing putting your dishes in the sink after you've eaten, all of those sorts of things will help with that habit as well. And that way, your child isn't the one when the class is packing up whose desk looks like a bomb has hit it, or whose bag is spilling out all over the floor near the port racks, or who's always missing something because it was put into the wrong desk, or that kind of thing. So practicing maintaining their space as part of a group, that is important. Recognizing what's yours, what's theirs. When we work together, what do we do with all the pieces of materials that we've worked with at the end of that activity? Setting up can be important too, going and getting all the things we need for the activity rather than just expecting to walk up, sit down at a desk and have everything laid out for you, as you might find in some homes. Dinner's set out for you, clothes are set out for you, the next activity is laid out for you, and they just move on, and the parent comes behind and packs it up. Now, point number 4 is around turn taking. If your child hasn't had to share with other children, this could be something that we need to work on quite a lot, because in a classroom, your child is one of, as I said before, 15 to 25, maybe even up to 30 students in a classroom. And so they're not always going to get the first turn in a game or in a whole class activity. They're not always going to be answering the question that the teacher asks. And it's important that we learn about being part of a community and taking our turn and giving other people turns as well. So sharing is important. Sharing the toys in the playground or in the play corner. Sharing the dice in board games. Sharing the favourite colour of counter or favourite seat or favourite spot at the front of the line. All of those things. That's all part of sharing responsibilities, sharing resources in a classroom. Using manners is important. Please, if you would like something, asking for it. Thank you when someone else is kind to you, those sorts of things. And learning to raise a hand to speak in a group so that we don't get this overwhelming chaos. And it can be a little bit hard for children who've never been in an environment where they have to raise their hand to speak at the beginning of school, because you can imagine the teacher asks a question and children are then sort of used to, in their own everyday life, giving the adult the answer. And so they may just call that out. And if the answer is correct, but the teacher says, hang on, you didn't raise your hand, it may sort of be a little crushing to some children, especially the children who really have that personality trait of being real people pleasers, because they've just given the correct answer maybe, but they didn't do it in the right way, and so they've received a bit of a negative response. Now, a kind and skillful teacher will give that feedback in a fairly positive way, so don't worry too much about that being damaging to your child. But if you can prepare them for the idea that they do need to raise their hand to speak in most classrooms, and that's not about control, really. It's about just managing and that turn taking and that fairness in the room, and sometimes teachers needing to give children who may be quite quiet and lack the confidence to raise their hand an opportunity to speak as well, all of those things. And teachers are very experienced in making sure that lots of people in the class get to have their voice heard. So don't worry that your child will not be heard, but just that respectfulness of waiting for your turn to speak and raising your hand. Now, ways that you can build that in, obviously, in your everyday life. You're not going to say to your child, now we're going to practice every time you want to ask mum or dad or grandma a question, I need you to raise your hand. You're not going to do that. But maybe you would go to an activity where there are a fair few children in the group and you do need to raise your hand to speak, and they can practice that with a different adult in a setting where it's more like school. So they can be practicing that skill that they will need at school. Yeah. And finally, proactive communication skills. Now, if your child's mostly with you, then they probably have their needs met fairly well because you know them so well and you can respond to their mannerisms as well as their words. So you're recognizing what they need. In school, the teacher doesn't know your child as well as you, particularly at the beginning of the year. And so it's important that your child can speak up for themselves and explain what it is they need if they need something. So reminding your child and helping your child practice asking for help from different adults if they need help with things, seeking clarification if they don't understand something. So if an instruction is given and the child doesn't understand, reminding them that it's okay to raise your hand and ask for that assistance or clarification. Which book, sorry, Mrs. Whoever or Mr. Whoever, I forgot which book. Which book do I need to get? The teacher's going to be much happier that the child asked then, rather than going to sit at their desk and then looking around and taking a long time because they're not sure and they don't feel confident to ask that question. So teaching them about the importance of asking for clarification if they need it, and also the importance of using their voice to instigate social interaction with other children. So if children come home from school and say, nobody's playing with me, we can be working with them to say, well, hang on a minute, have you asked anybody to play with you? Have you found a game and said to someone nearby, would you like to kick the ball with me? Would you like to come down the slide with me? Would you like to play vets or homes or schools or whatever it might be with me? Would you like to build Lego with me? Would you like to make a road with me? You can be asking people and reminding the child that it's okay if somebody else says, no, thank you, because everybody has their own choice, but they can be inviting people. And so using their voice proactively with teachers and caregivers in the school setting, and then also using their voice proactively with their peers. And that proactive communication will be very empowering for your child. So there are 5 things you can be working on in terms of their social skills in readiness for school. If you liked this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up. I would really appreciate comments to let me know if you have feedback on what I've said or questions that you'd like me to answer, or any other advice that you would like about starting school. If there are any topics about education that you'd like me to cover for your child, either a preschooler or an older child, please send me an email to jane@lavenderlearning.com.au. I'm pretty new to this YouTube space. As I said, I'm mostly a face-to-face teacher, tutor, educator, and just because my schedule is full, I'm looking for new ways to help people, and I thought this may be a great way. So I'm really welcome interaction. Thanks very much for your time. I hope these tips have been helpful. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any future videos.